My aunt called and demanded, "Apologize to my daughter right now, even if it's a misunderstanding." I replied, "I'm not compromising just to keep the peace." Days later, everyone found out she was the one breaking the rules. So here's the deal. I'm 34, a senior IT systems administrator at a manufacturing company out here in the Midwest. We're talking about 400 employees, big enough to have serious tech, but small enough that you know most people. I've been there 7 years, got promoted a couple years back. I actually really love my job. Why? Because servers don't lie. When something breaks, there's always a log file, a digital breadcrumb, that tells you exactly why. Remember that, because it becomes painfully, gloriously relevant. My cousin, Tessa, she's 28. We grew up together, saw each other at every family gathering, holidays, birthdays, even funerals. We were never super close, but we were, family. Friendly enough. She's undeniably smart, great with people. Had this knack for making you feel like the most important person in the room. I honestly thought she'd end up in sales or politics. Then, about 8 months ago, she got hired at my company. Not through me, mind you. Her mom, my Aunt Diane, a master networker, bless her heart, pulled some strings with a board member, a golf buddy. Tessa got the interview, and from what I understand, she got the job in marketing on her own merits. But, man, when I heard she was coming, I felt this knot in my stomach. Not because I didn't want her there, but because mixing family and work? That's just a recipe for disaster. I played it cool, kept it professional. Said congratulations at Sunday dinner, showed her the good vending machine on her first day. Then, I mostly stayed in my own lane. IT and marketing don't exactly overlap much. Different floors, different worlds. For the first few months, it was totally fine. Tessa was settling in. She'd text me little questions. Where do I park? How do I do expense reports? Normal cousin stuff. I'd help her out. But around month 4, things started to get weird. It was subtle at first, just little things. She'd drop my name into conversations with people I barely knew. A guy from facilities casually mentioned that Tessa had apparently told him I was super protective of my work turf. Then, a woman in accounting asked me if I really could access other departments' files, because Tessa had asked her. I shrugged it off. People talk, right? She was new, probably just navigating office politics. But then, she started showing up on my floor. Look, our office layout is simple. IT is on the 3rd floor, marketing is on the 2nd. There's no reason for marketing to be on the 3rd floor, unless they have an IT ticket, and even then, most of that's remote. But there she was, in our break room, chatting up my coworkers, asking casual questions about our projects. One afternoon, I walked into the server room, and she was just standing in the hallway right outside it, staring at her phone. I said, "Hey, you lost?" She laughed. "Oh, just waiting for someone. This building's a maze." The server room requires badge access, by the way. Later, out of habit, I checked the logs. She hadn't tried to badge in, but she'd been standing right there. I told myself I was being paranoid. She's family, not some corporate spy. But a chill started to creep in. Her presence on my floor, the questions, it just started to feel wrong. Around month 5, I started hearing whispers about Tessa's work slipping. Not directly, of course. That's just how information travels in a mid-sized company. Missed deadlines, a campaign with wrong pricing, an internal email accidentally sent to a vendor. Nothing individually catastrophic, but it was a clear pattern. Her 6-month probationary review was looming, and it wasn't looking good. And then, the family drama spilled over. My Aunt Diane called my mom, Linda, sounding really upset that Tessa was struggling, hinting that maybe I could help her out more. My mom, ever the peacemaker, relayed the message. "Diane thinks you could mentor Tessa, show her the ropes." I nearly exploded. "Mom, she's in marketing. I run servers. I can't mentor her on things I don't even do." She just said, I know, but maybe just check in. She looks up to you." So fine. I agreed to coffee. We met in the 1st floor cafe. Tessa seemed totally fine, actually, even upbeat. She gushed about a new campaign, asked about my weekend, perfectly normal cousin conversation. When I asked if she was settling in, she just smiled and said, "Everything's great." 2 weeks later, an email landed in my inbox from Priya Ayanqua in Human Resources. Subject line, "Confidential workplace concern." My stomach dropped. I've been in IT for over a decade. I've sat in plenty of HR meetings, usually to provide technical support for an investigation, pulling email logs, checking access records. I figured this was just another one of those. I was dead wrong. I walked into the conference room. Priya was there, professional as ever, with a notepad, a laptop, and a folder so thick it looked like it could hold a brick. She gave me that tight, HR smile and said, "Nolan, what we discuss here is confidential. A formal complaint has been filed regarding your workplace conduct." My mind just stalled. My conduct? Yes, she continued. The complaint alleges a pattern of behavior, including unauthorized access to another employee's files, spreading negative information about a colleague, and creating a hostile work environment. My mouth went completely dry. Who filed this? I managed to choke out. Priya hesitated. I can't disclose that at this stage. She didn't have to. I knew. She laid out the complaint without naming Tessa, but the details screamed her name. I'd accessed marketing files without authorization, talked trash about a new employee to undermine them, monitored their schedule and movements, and created an unsafe environment. Let me be absolutely clear. Not a single word of it was true. I was furious, absolutely incandescent with rage, but this weird calm settled over me. Years in IT taught me that in a formal accusation, your emotional reaction is the first thing noted. So, I kept my hands on the table, my voice steady. Priya, I haven't accessed files outside my job. I haven't spoken to leadership about anyone's performance. And I certainly haven't been monitoring anyone. She nodded. This is an investigation, not a conclusion. You'll have a full opportunity to respond. We'll review all available evidence. What kind of evidence? I asked, my blood simmering. System access logs, email records, badge data, security camera footage, she rattled off. I almost laughed. Almost. Because here's the thing about being an IT admin. I know exactly what those logs record, how granular they are, how long they're kept. Every badge swipe, every login, every file access, every single VPN connection, timestamped to the second. If someone claimed I accessed files I shouldn't have, those logs would either confirm it or destroy the accusation completely. Pull everything you need, I told her. I'll cooperate fully. Priya said the investigation would take 1 to 2 weeks, and I wasn't to discuss it with anyone. I agreed, shook her hand, and walked out feeling like the floor was tilting under my feet. My boss, Marcus, was waiting. He already knew company policy. He closed my door, sat down. You okay? Not really. He looked at me, dead serious. For what it's worth, I've worked with you 7 years. I don't believe a word of it. That was a relief, man. Thanks, Marcus. Just cooperate with the process. The logs will speak for themselves. He was right. I knew he was right. But knowing the truth would come out and actually living through that agonizing waiting period are two very different experiences. I drove home that night, numb, and just sat in my driveway for 15 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. I called Owen, my best friend, gave him the bare bones without naming names or company specifics. He was great, said it was garbage, that the truth would come out, and to document everything. Then my phone buzzed. The family group chat. It was Aunt Diane. I opened it, and the air just left my lungs. Her message read, I am heartbroken and disgusted to share that Tessa has been the victim of targeted harassment at her workplace by a member of this family. She has been brave enough to report it, and I am asking everyone to support her during this incredibly difficult time. Tessa, we love you and we believe you. 16 people in that chat. My parents, my brother, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone. The replies flooded in. Hearts, prayer hands. Oh my God, Tessa. Who would do something like that? Stay strong, sweetheart. About 10 minutes later, Tessa responded with a message that was clearly, painfully rehearsed. Thank you all so much. I didn't want to make this public, but I can't keep pretending everything is fine. Someone in our family has been trying to get me fired for months, monitoring me, accessing my private work files, telling my boss's lies. I've reported it to HR, and I'm praying they take it seriously. I just want to feel safe at work. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. I'm the only family member who works at that company. My phone blew up with individual texts. My uncle Rob. Nolan, is this true? My cousin Jake. Dude, what the hell? My brother Kevin called. I couldn't respond. HR had explicitly told me not to discuss the investigation. And even if they hadn't, what was I supposed to say in a group chat? Actually, she's lying. That's not how this works. Ever. 20 minutes later, my mom called, her voice laced with worry. Nolan, what is going on? Mom, I can't talk about this. Diane is beside herself. She says Tessa hasn't been sleeping. Her therapist says she's developing anxiety because of work. Mom, I haven't done anything to Tessa. I need you to hear me say that. Silence. Then, well, something is going on. That girl is clearly upset. Being upset doesn't mean what she's saying is true, I countered. More silence. Then, the sentence that hit me like a physical blow. Maybe you should just call Diane and apologize. Even if it's a misunderstanding, it would go a long way. Apologize for something I didn't do? To keep the peace? I told my mom I loved her. I'd talk to her when I could. And I hung up. I just sat there on my couch in the dark, and all those years, all those Thanksgivings, Christmases, backyard barbecues, flashed through my mind. Aunt Diane's little digs about how Tessa was just as smart as Nolan. She just didn't get the same opportunities. Every single time my parents had asked me to be the bigger person. Every single time, being the bigger person just meant being the smaller one. The next morning, at work, I kept my head down. Tessa was on the second floor, I was on the third. Avoiding her wasn't hard. But the atmosphere was different. Not everyone, of course. Most of my coworkers had no clue. But a few people, in the hallways, gave me that look. The sideways glance. The conversation that abruptly stopped when I walked past. She'd been talking. Despite the confidentiality rules, despite HR almost certainly telling her not to discuss the complaint, she'd been poisoning the well. I ate lunch alone at my desk that day. Owen texted, "How you holding up?" I sent a thumbs-up emoji. A complete lie. I just didn't have the energy for anything real. That evening, Aunt Diane called me directly. I almost let it go to voicemail, but then thought, no, I need to hear this. Nolan, her voice dripped with venom. What you've done to my daughter is unforgivable. Diane, I haven't. She trusted you. She looked up to you, and you tried to sabotage her because you couldn't stand having someone else in the family succeed. You're a disgrace. She hung up before I could even process what she'd said. I slammed my phone on the counter, poured a glass of water, and just chugged the whole thing, standing at the sink. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer effort of not calling her back and unleashing everything I wanted to say. But here's the thing about working in IT, and I mean this with every fiber of my being. When you spend your career troubleshooting complex systems, you learn a fundamental truth. Emotions don't fix problems. Data does. And that data? It was about to speak very loudly. What none of my family knew, what Tessa certainly didn't know, was that when HR pulled those access logs to investigate her complaint against me, they were about to unearth something she never, ever expected. The investigation stretched on for 11 excruciating days. 11 days of showing up for work, doing my job, and pretending I wasn't secretly under investigation for harassment. 11 days of lonely lunches at my desk. 11 days of ignoring a family group chat that felt like a public execution. You know, people imagine these kinds of investigations as these big, dramatic torture scenes. They're not. They're quiet. They're grinding. They slowly chip away at you, making you question yourself even when you know, deep down, you're right. On day 2, Priya called me back for a follow-up. She had this list of specific dates and times, straight from Tessa's complaint. Days I'd allegedly accessed her files, days I'd supposedly badmouthed her to her supervisors. She read each one, asking me to account for my whereabouts. This is where being a methodical IT guy actually saved me. I keep a detailed calendar. Always have. It's an admin habit. When something crashes at 2 a.m., you need to know exactly what changed and when. So, when Priya said, the complainant states that on March 14th, you accessed files in the marketing share drive without authorization, I just pulled up my phone. March 14th? I was off-site at a vendor training in Columbus. I have the registration and hotel receipt. Priya dutifully wrote it down. We went through 6 more dates. For 3, I had rock-solid alibis. Off-site, documented meetings, or even PTO. For the others, I was at work, but had no business being on the marketing floor or in their systems. The access logs will confirm whether my credentials were used, I told her. I'm asking you to pull them. That process is already underway, she said. Now, this next part is critical to understand. At my company, IT manages the systems, but we don't investigate ourselves. When HR needs technical evidence for an internal case, they bring in an outside forensic IT consultant. This is specifically to prevent any IT employee from, manipulating data, which was, ironically, exactly what Tessa was accusing me of. So, my own department was hands-off. Marcus had already recused himself. The consultant? A complete stranger to all of us. And you know what? That was more than fine by me. It meant nobody could claim I'd tampered with anything. As the investigation plodded along at work, the family situation just imploded. My brother Kevin, 2 years younger, always my closest ally, came over on day 4. He sat on my couch, looking worried. "I don't believe you did this, man, but I need to hear you say it." "I didn't do any of it," I told him, my voice tight. "None of it." "Then why would she make it up?" he asked. "Her probation review is coming up. It's not going well. I think she's trying to create a narrative where anything negative that happens to her is my fault." Kevin rubbed his face. "That's a big accusation, Nolan." "So is hers," I shot back. He nodded slowly. "Mom and Dad are a mess. Dad hasn't said much, but Mom? She's a pendulum. One minute she believes you, the next Diane calls, and she's back to asking you to apologize." "I'm not apologizing for something I didn't do," I stated firmly. "I know," he sighed. "I told them that." He paused, then dropped another bombshell. "But you should know, Diane's telling everyone this is a pattern. Saying you were always jealous of Tessa. Bringing up stuff from when we were kids." "What stuff?" I demanded. "Remember when Tessa didn't get into the honors program in 8th grade, and you did? Diane's saying you rubbed it in her face." I was 13. 13. I walked Kevin to the door, and he hugged me. He never hugs me. That scared me more than anything Diane had said. Days 5 through 8 were the absolute worst. The family group chat became this grotesque support forum for Tessa. Every day, some encouraging message. Aunt Diane shared an article about workplace bullying. My Uncle Rob posted something about believing women in the workplace, which, don't get me wrong, I support, but the irony of it being used to defend someone who was lying through her teeth was not lost on me. I muted the chat. I had to. Every notification was like a small electric shock. At work, I just did my job. Patched servers. Resolved tickets. Sat in meetings about network upgrades, pretending my entire career wasn't hanging by the thinnest thread. The outside consultant had full access, pulling logs for every single date Tessa mentioned. Then, on day 9, something happened that I almost missed. I was doing my regular thing, reviewing routine access alerts, totally unrelated to the investigation. And I noticed something odd. A failed login attempt on an administrative account. Not mine, but a shared service account IT uses for system maintenance. The attempt came from a workstation on the 2nd floor. The marketing floor. I flagged it through the proper channels, sent an email to Marcus, and CC'd the outside consultant. Anomalous login attempt on service account. 2nd floor terminal, timestamp attached. Logging for review. Professional. By the book. No interpretation, no accusation. Just data. Marcus replied. Noted. Forwarded to the investigator. I didn't think much of it then. Failed logins happen all the time. People mistype passwords, use the wrong credentials. It's noise, 99% of the time. But apparently, the consultant didn't treat this one as noise. Because on day 10, Priya sent me a very short email. The investigation scope has been expanded. No action required on your part at this time. Expanded. That word stuck with me. Investigations expand when the investigator finds something they weren't originally looking for. Meanwhile, Tessa was absolutely thriving in the family victim narrative. My mom called me on day 10, sounding utterly exhausted. Diane says the investigation is going well. She says Tessa's claims are being validated. Mom, I tried to explain, Diane doesn't know anything about what the investigation is finding. She's not part of it. She says Tessa told her. Tessa isn't supposed to be discussing the investigation at all. Neither am I, which is why I haven't been defending myself in the group chat. But I need you to understand something crucial. When this is over, the truth is going to come out. And I need to know that you'll still be standing where you are right now. My mom was quiet for a long, heavy moment. Then she said, I just want this to be over. So do I, Mom. So do I. On day 11, the consultant finished. I knew it because Marcus stopped by my office late that afternoon. He closed the door, sat down, an expression I couldn't quite read on his face. The report is done, he said. I haven't seen it. HR has it. Priya's going to schedule meetings this week. Meetings, plural? I asked. He looked at me for a beat. Plural. He left without another word, but there was something in his eyes. Not pity, not just concern, but something closer to grim satisfaction. Like a mechanic who finally finds the rattle that's been driving everyone crazy. I drove home that night knowing two things. 1. I was about to be either totally cleared or totally fired. 2. When Tessa filed that complaint and demanded HR pull the access logs, she had no earthly idea what a truly thorough investigation actually looks like. She thought they'd only look at what she told them to look at. They didn't. Not even close. Priya called me in on a Wednesday morning. Same conference room, same notepad, same laptop, but that thick folder was gone. In its place, a single, thin document, face down. She gestured for me to sit. Then, she said the words I'd been waiting 11 agonizing days to hear. Nolan, the investigation into the complaint filed against you has been completed. Based on a thorough review of system access logs, email records, badge swipe data, security camera footage, and interviews, we have found no evidence to support any of the allegations made against you. I exhaled, a long, shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The complaint is being dismissed in full. No disciplinary action, no formal record, no restrictions. Thank you. I managed, my voice sounding distant hollow. Priya paused, then flipped that document over and slid it towards me. I need to share some additional findings with you, she said, her voice carefully neutral, because they directly involve your account credentials and department systems. I looked down. It was a summary report from the outside consultant. Timestamped entries, login attempts, badge swipe records, file access logs. None of them were mine. During the course of investigating the complaint against you, Priya continued, each word precise, the consultant identified a series of unauthorized access attempts originating from workstations on the second floor. My blood ran cold. Specifically, someone using a second-floor terminal attempted to log into your email account on 4 separate occasions over a 3-week period. All attempts failed due to incorrect credentials. I stared at the timestamps. 3 of them were during Tessa's regular work hours. The 4th was after 7 p.m. on a Thursday, long after marketing usually cleared out. Additionally, Priya pressed on, the same individual attempted to access the IT shared service account that you flagged on day 9 of the investigation. Bingo. Badge swipe data confirms which employee was present at the relevant workstation during each of these attempts. She didn't say Tessa's name. She didn't have to. Security camera footage from the 3rd floor corroborates the badge data. The same employee was also observed on the 3rd floor on multiple occasions without any documented business purpose, including the hallway adjacent to the server room. I remembered Tessa, just standing there, phone in hand, waiting for someone. Priya closed the document. I want to be transparent with you, Nolan. These findings have raised serious concerns regarding the complainant's own conduct, including potential violations of our acceptable use policy, unauthorized access attempts, and the possibility that the original complaint was filed in bad faith. She paused for impact. A separate investigation has been opened. A separate investigation into the person who filed the complaint against me. I just sat there, processing. What happens now for me? I finally asked. You return to your normal duties, effective immediately. Marcus has been briefed. If you experience any retaliation, contact me directly. I thanked Priya, stood up, and my legs felt like unreliable jelly. I made it back to my desk, sat there, just staring at my monitor, not really seeing anything. An hour later, Marcus appeared in my doorway. He didn't come in, just leaned against the frame. Good meeting? Yeah, good. He paused. Take the rest of the day if you need it. I'm fine. I know you're fine, he said, a knowing look in his eye. Take the day anyway. I went home. I sat in my kitchen, ate a sandwich I couldn't even taste, and thought about what came next. The professional side? Resolved, or at least in motion. But the family side? That was a raging wildfire, and I was about to douse it with gasoline just by speaking the truth. I decided not to tell anyone yet. Not my parents, not Kevin, not anyone. I wanted to let the corporate process play out. Tessa still didn't know the investigation had flipped on her. She was still playing the victim in the family group chat, posting about healing and finding strength. Aunt Diane was still tagging me in passive-aggressive posts about toxic family members. I unmuted the group chat for the first time in a week. The most recent message from that morning was Aunt Diane. So proud of Tessa for standing up against workplace abuse. Some people in this family could learn something about integrity. My mom had liked it. I muted it again. 3 days later, Owen and I met for dinner. I told him I'd been cleared. He leaned back in his chair, a wry smile playing on his lips. And what? Come on, I know that face. There's more. There's more, I admitted. But it's not mine to tell yet. The company is handling it. Owen studied me. She did something, didn't she? Something they found during the investigation. I can't talk about it, I reiterated. You just told me everything I need to know by not talking about it, he said, and raised his glass. To the logs. To the logs. 4 days after my meeting with Priya, I was at my desk when Marcus walked in. He closed the door. Again, Priya's going to contact you this afternoon, he said, choosing his words carefully. There's going to be a meeting tomorrow morning regarding the other investigation. He looked at me, a flicker of concern. You're being asked to attend in a limited, technical advisory capacity. They may need you to verify system access protocols, account permissions. Okay. Nolan, he sat down. Whatever happens in that meeting, keep doing what you've been doing. Stay professional. Stay factual. Don't editorialize. I haven't editorialized once through this entire thing, I reminded him. I know, he said. That's why I'm telling you to keep it up. Because tomorrow is going to be hard. He left, and I just stared at my closed door. I thought about Tessa, 1 floor below, probably still sending messages to the family about how brave she was. Still believing that when HR called her in, it would be to tell her I'd been fired. That evening, my phone rang. It was my mom. Nolan, Tessa says she has a meeting with HR tomorrow. She thinks they're going to tell her the investigation results. Diane is so relieved. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath. Mom, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I was cleared completely. A week ago, every single allegation was investigated and disproven. There is no evidence against me because there was nothing to find. Silence. And tomorrow's meeting? It's not about me. What do you mean it isn't about you? Tessa said, I can't say anything else, Mom. But after tomorrow, a lot of things are going to become very clear. And when they do, I need you to remember this phone call. My mom started to say something, but I cut her off gently. I love you. I'll call you tomorrow night. I hung up, set my alarm for 6 a.m. Whatever was coming, I wanted to be ready. I wanted to be early. I got to work at 7:30. The meeting was at 9. I made coffee, checked emails, reviewed a patch deployment schedule, anything to feel normal. At 8:45, Priya called my desk phone. Conference room on the first floor. Different room this time, larger. When I walked in, Priya was there, along with Dennis, the outside IT consultant, and a woman from legal, Sheila Brandt, whom I'd only seen in passing. Nolan, thank you for coming, Priya said. You're here in a technical advisory capacity. You are not the subject of this meeting. Understood, I replied. We waited. At 9:02, the door opened, and Tessa walked in. She looked confident, poised even. She was wearing a blazer I'd seen her in at family dinners. Aunt Diane called it her power outfit. She saw me, and her expression flickered for just a second. Confusion, then something sharper. But then the smile snapped back into place. Hi, Nolan, she chirped, like we were meeting for brunch. Priya asked everyone to sit. Then she began. Tessa, thank you for joining us. As you know, you filed a formal workplace complaint 2 weeks ago, alleging that a colleague engaged in unauthorized access to your files, attempted to undermine your professional standing, and created a hostile work environment. That investigation has been completed. Tessa nodded, sitting up straighter. She even glanced at me with an almost pitying look. The investigation found no evidence to support any of the allegations in your complaint. Your colleague has been fully cleared. The shift in Tessa's demeanor was instant. Her smile didn't drop. It froze. Like someone had hit pause on a video. I'm sorry, what? System access logs show no evidence that your colleague accessed any marketing files or systems outside his documented responsibilities, Priya recited, utterly devoid of emotion. Badge data confirms his location during the relevant periods. In several instances, he was not on site at all. Interviews with supervisors found no evidence he communicated negatively about your performance. Tessa's jaw tightened. That can't be right. I know what he was doing. However, Priya continued, her voice taking on a new, steely quality. During the investigation, the outside consultant identified a separate pattern of activity that requires discussion. She turned to Dennis, the consultant. He opened his laptop, began reading from his report. Between March 3rd and March 22nd, there were 4 failed login attempts on Mr. Nolan's email account, all originating from workstation M207, registered to the marketing department, 2nd floor. He looked up at Tessa. Badge access records show that the individual assigned to that workstation during each of those attempts was you. Tessa went completely still. Additionally, on March 19th, there was an attempted login to a shared IT service account from the same workstation. This account requires administrative credentials restricted to the IT department. The attempt failed, but it was logged and flagged. Priya picked it up. Security camera footage from the 3rd floor shows you in the hallway outside the server room on 3 occasions over a 2-week period. You had no documented business reason to be in that area. Tessa looked at me, then at Priya, then at Sheila from legal. The confidence had evaporated. What replaced it wasn't fear, not exactly. It was the dawning realization that the ground beneath her had just become quicksand. You're twisting this, she stammered. I was just trying to find evidence of what he was doing to me. By attempting to access his email account without authorization? Sheila asked, her voice quiet, but cutting. It wasn't like that. I was protecting myself. The acceptable use policy, which you signed during onboarding, explicitly prohibits attempting to access another employee's accounts or any system for which you do not have documented authorization, Priya stated. Regardless of your stated intent, these actions constitute multiple policy violations. Tessa's voice shot up half an octave. So he gets away with everything, and I'm the one in trouble? He's been making my life miserable since I started here. He's been sabotaging my work. Ask anyone. We did ask, Priya said flatly. We interviewed 14 employees across 3 departments. Not one person corroborated your claims. Several noted that Mr. Nolan had minimal interaction with you or the marketing department. Tessa turned to me, her eyes pleading, desperate. Are you just going to sit there? Say something. Tell them what you've been doing. I looked at her, my cousin, the girl I'd shared 25 years of Thanksgivings with. And I said the only thing I could say. The only truth. I haven't done anything to you, Tessa. I never did. She stared at me for a long moment, then just looked down at the table, utterly defeated. Priya then informed Tessa that her employment was being terminated, effective immediately, for multiple violations of company policy, including unauthorized access attempts, and filing a complaint determined to be made in bad faith. Sheila from legal added that the company reserved the right to pursue additional remedies if warranted. Security escorted Tessa to her desk to collect her personal belongings. I was asked to remain in the conference room until she'd left the building. I sat there for 20 long minutes after they walked her out. Sheila shook my hand, offered a soft, I'm sorry you went through this. Priya handed me a copy of the summary findings and told me to take the rest of the day. I didn't. I went back to my desk and worked until 5, because honestly, I didn't know what else to do with myself. The family implosion started at exactly 6:47 p.m. Aunt Diane, predictably, went nuclear in the group chat. Her message seethed. Tessa was fired today because Nolan turned the whole company against her. He manipulated the investigation and had her removed. This family should be ashamed of itself for standing by while a jealous, petty man destroys a young woman's career. Then my phone rang. My mom. Nolan, your Aunt Diane is saying Tessa was escorted out of the building. Was she? What happened? I told her everything. The false complaint, my full clearance, Tessa's unauthorized access, the termination. I spoke for about 10 minutes straight. My mom didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she just said, I asked you to apologize. Yeah, Mom. You did. The silence that followed was the heaviest I've ever experienced. Then, her voice cracking. I'm so sorry, Nolan. I should have believed you from the beginning. Yeah, Mom, I said, and I didn't comfort her. I couldn't. Pretending otherwise would have been worse for both of us. Kevin called an hour later. He'd already heard from Mom. I knew it, he simply said. I knew something was off. I didn't respond to the group chat. I didn't post the findings. I didn't say a single word. But within 48 hours, the truth had ripped through the family on its own. My mom told my dad. Kevin told Uncle Rob. Rob called his wife, who called Diane. And according to Kevin, Diane screamed at Rob for 20 minutes before hanging up. Aunt Diane never apologized. She still hasn't. She left the family group chat and started a new one without me, Kevin, or my parents. Last I heard, about 4 people joined it. The rest stayed. Tessa texted me once, about 3 weeks after she was fired. It just said, "I hope you're happy." I didn't respond. It's been about 4 months now. My parents and I are talking regularly again, but it's different. There's a carefulness there now that never existed before. My dad took me to lunch a few weeks ago, looked me in the eye, and said, "I didn't handle that well, and I'm sorry." It was the most direct thing he'd ever said to me. I told him I appreciated it, and I genuinely meant it, but I'd be lying if I said everything was back to normal. Aunt Diane and Tessa have essentially excised themselves from the family. Diane still blames me. Tessa, from what I've heard through the grapevine, got a job at a smaller company in a different city. I genuinely hope it works out for her. I don't say that to be noble. I just don't have the energy to wish her ill. What she did cost me weeks of sleep and months of fractured family relationships. But it's done. Marcus gave me a performance bonus last quarter. He didn't say it was related. He didn't have to. Owen and I still grab dinner most weeks. Last time, he asked if I'd learned anything from the whole experience. I thought about it for a while. Yeah, I said. I learned that when someone demands you pull the records, you should always pull the records. He laughed. I did too. First time in a long time that it felt real. Look, I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I'm sharing it because when your own family turns on you, when you can't defend yourself, you feel utterly, completely alone. And I want anyone in that situation to know this. The truth doesn't always come out quickly. It doesn't always come out cleanly. But if you keep your head down, if you let the evidence speak, it does come out. And sometimes, the person who demanded the investigation is the one who should have been most terrified of what it would reveal. Have you ever had to choose between family peace and standing up for yourself, even when it means facing public scorn? What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts.